We like to believe that success is planned, that the biggest games were always destined to win, but that's not how it usually happens. Some of the most influential games ever made launched with doubt, limited expectations, or outright skepticism from publishers, developers, or even their very own creators. They weren't designed to dominate the industry. In several cases, they were experiments, side projects, or last-ditch efforts. Today we're looking at 10 games that their developers never expected to be so popular. Developed by From Software and directed by Hidetaka Miyazaki, Demon's Souls entered production with very little internal confidence. The project was already struggling before Miyazaki took over, and its punishing difficulty, cryptic systems, and refusal to explain itself went directly against the industry trends focused on accessibility and mass appeal. Even its publisher Sony Japan Studio had limited expectations, resulting in a restrained release and minimal marketing outside Japan. Then something unexpected happened. Players didn't walk away, they leaned in. Word of mouth transformed Demon's Souls into a cult phenomenon, laying the foundation for From Software's modern identity. What had been considered hostile design became respected philosophy, ultimately reshaping how difficulty, player trust, and mastery were treated across modern action RPGs. Number 9. Among Us was developed by Inner Sloth, a tiny independent studio that initially expected the game to reach a very small audience. At launch, it struggled to attract attention and spent years with a minimal player base. The developers continued updating it quietly, assuming it would remain a niche, social experiment rather than a mainstream success. Then timing intervened. Everything aligned at once. Streamers, online communities, and social circumstances turned a nearly forgotten title into a global phenomenon. Among Us became proof that popularity isn't always tied to launch momentum, demonstrating how visibility and context can completely rewrite a game's fate long after release. Number 8. Minecraft began as an experimental sandbox created by Marcus Notch Persson. Initially developed under Mojang with no publisher backing and no predefined end goal, its blocky visuals, lack of structure, and open-ended design weren't intended to appeal to a mass audience. Even Notch himself viewed it as a personal project rather than a future cultural landmark. What followed was unprecedented. Players transformed Minecraft into a platform for creativity, experimentation, and community-driven expansion. Its success redefined expectations around player agency, modding, and longevity, influencing how developers approached sandbox design for years to come. Number 7. Stardew Valley was created almost entirely by Eric Barone, known publicly as Concerned Ape, working alone for several years. Originally conceived as a personal project inspired by classic farming simulations, the game was never designed with mass success in mind. It launched without a marketing machine, major publisher support, or industry hype. Instead, sincerity carried it forward. Depth replaced spectacle. Players connected with its systems, characters, and sense of care. Stardew Valley proved that personal vision and emotional grounding could rival blockbuster production, reshaping perceptions of what independent developers could achieve on their own. Number 6. Pokémon Red and Blue were developed by Game Freak and published by Nintendo under the creative leadership of Satoshi Tajiri. The game endured a long and difficult development cycle, pushing the limits of Game Boy's hardware. Internally, there were concerns that trading creatures via link cable would feel gimmicky rather than meaningful. The connection flipped the script. Collection became communal. Pokémon's success demonstrated the power of shared interaction, transforming a simple RPG into a social phenomenon. It permanently influenced how games integrated connectivity, turning communication between players into a core design pillar. Number 5. The Witcher was developed by CD Projekt Red, a studio with little global recognition at the time, adapting a fantasy series by Andrzej Sapkowski. The game launched with rough edges, unconventional mechanics, and limited international awareness. Expectations were restrained, especially outside Eastern Europe. Persistence rewrote its future. Reputation grew slowly. Through sequels and continued refinement, CD Projekt Red elevated The Witcher into one of gaming's most respected franchises. Its rise illustrated how long-term commitment and iteration could transform an overlooked debut into a defining series. Number 4. Fortnite Battle Royale was developed by Epic Games, a studio already known for Unreal Engine and competitive shooters, but this mode was never destined to define the company's future. Epic's primary focus was Save the World, a cooperative survival experience that had been in production for years. Battle Royale was built quickly, largely as a response to an emerging genre rather than a long-term vision. The storm that followed was anything but ordinary. Adaptability became dominance. Instead of treating updates as maintenance, Epic treated Fortnite as a living system. Weekly changes, seasonal events, mechanical experiments, and cosmetic crossovers arrived at a pace the industry hadn't seen before. Rather than stabilizing the experience, Epic intentionally disrupted it, teaching players to expect evolution rather than balance. Fortnite didn't just succeed as a game, it normalized constant transformation as a business model. Number 3. Developed by From Software and directed by, you guessed it, Hidetaka Miyazaki, Dark Souls followed Demon's Souls with the assumption that its audience would remain limited. Its refusal to provide tutorials, explicit storytelling, or mechanical forgiveness went against nearly every prevailing design philosophy of the time. Even among fans of the previous game, expectations were cautious. But lightning struck twice. Challenge became respect. Dark Souls reframed difficulty as a shared language between designer and player. Every loss carried information, every victory felt earned, and every shortcut unlocked reinforced mastery rather than relief. Its influence spread beyond action RPGs, inspiring designers across genres to treat restraint, ambiguity, and consequence as strengths instead of risks. Difficulty stopped being something to apologize for. Number 2. The Sims was developed by Maxis under the creative leadership of Will Wright, and it faced skepticism at nearly every stage of development. A game centered on routine, relationships, and domestic space lacked traditional win conditions, combat, or linear progression. Many questioned whether players would engage with a simulation that offered no defined endpoint. Then players defined the experience themselves. Observation turned into attachment. Instead of chasing victory, players created stories. The Sims became a mirror for humor, chaos, creativity, and experimentation, inviting audiences traditionally excluded from gaming spaces. Its success permanently expanded the industry's understanding of who games could be for and what mechanics could hold attention. Simulation became emotional, not just technical. Number 1. Grand Theft Auto 3 was developed by DMA Design, later renamed Rockstar North, with leadership from Sam Houser and Leslie Benzies. While ambitious, the team didn't anticipate how players would interact with a fully three-dimensional city built around freedom rather than mission completion. The structure existed, but obedience to it was optional. True freedom transcended expectation. Possibility became the point. Players ignored objectives, tested boundaries, and treated the city like a sandbox long before that term was standardized. GTA 3 shifted open-world design from scripted sequences to systematic interaction. Cities stopped being stages and became toys. That single shift influenced decades of design across genres, platforms, and studios. None of these games were built with certainty. They launched with hesitation, compromise, or modest ambition. What carried them forward wasn't prediction, it was discovery. Players found something the creators themselves couldn't fully see yet. If you enjoy looking at games through that lens, not as products, but as ideas that evolved in the wild, consider subscribing. And if there's a game you think never should have worked, but somehow did, it's probably worth talking about next.